You call it the washroom here in Canada, apparently. I've learned. The venue people kept talking about the washroom, and I was like, I don't need to take a shower. But Toronto, Ontario, Canada, what is good? That is a lot of people. This is fun. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming out to the show. I very, very much appreciate it. Give yourselves a round of applause for making it out. This wouldn't have been possible without you. This is my first time in Toronto at all. It is a very nice city. Your buildings are big. And I'm all like, oh, I'm the Manhattanite. We're the big building place. And I'm walking around, I'm like, ooh, okay, Toronto. I see it. Now, I am very excited to get into what we have for the show tonight. We have two very fun acts. Got some fun PJO stuff to cover here. In that first act, we're gonna be covering a very interesting and intense chapter-ish. We're getting to the real thick of it in book 5, so let's get right to it. But before we can get to it, we gotta bring on our guest. It's someone that I love, it's someone that you love, it's someone that people are more excited to see than me, usually. And honestly, I can't blame them. Welcome to the stage, Kelly Schubert!
Hello, everybody.
How's it going?
Good. I heard you tell a lie from backstage.
Which lie?
We have been to Toronto before.
Oh. Yeah, we really experienced Toronto.
Super briefly. During a layover, we got stuck here and we landed at about 11 p.m. and had Tim Hortons because it was the only thing that was open, walked across the parking lot to a hotel, and then left the next morning.
And we were supposed to be going to Quebec City, right? And we had a layover, and it was this thing where it was like last flight, it got delayed, and then we missed the connection, so we had to stay in Toronto. But it wasn't a weather thing, and it wasn't like a plane mechanical failure thing. It was some sort of like FAA, like regulation of, oh, planes can't fly, and that's why we missed the delay. And we have travel insurance with our credit card, and you can submit the whole thing, and we're like, oh, they're gonna cover it, we'll book the hotel, this Tim Hortons will be free, get whatever you want, dear. And I go to like fill out the forms and stuff, and when I sent it in, I got like a thing back from our credit card company. Chase, I'll put them on blast, it. They were like, oh, you need proof that it wasn't like a mechanical thing or a weather thing. And then I sent this thing over from whatever airline we were flying that said it. And then they're like, no, we need more proof. And I was like, from the FAA? Like, do I have to call them up and be like, hi guys, it's me. One of the guys that was on one of the a million flights from a couple weeks ago. It was a mess. We never got it reimbursed. So I guess it was just a fun little couple-hour Toronto vacation.
A fun little stay, and it was interesting too because since we thought it was going to be free, it felt very fun in the moment. And then after the fact, we were like, we had to pay to stay in that hotel for like 8 hours.
If
maximum.
that.
Yeah. Made it a little less fun, but it was in the past.
But let's have some real fun here. We're going to be continuing our coverage of chapter 13 of book 5 and then cover some of chapter 14. Now, I was in the green room editing the episode that's going to come out later today. And I heard you on the episode that's going to come out say, because we were doing the one that started off book 5, and you said that you read book 5 so quickly that you couldn't even process whether or not it was your favorite book or where it ranked. Your answer was basically, I don't even know. So now that you have read it again in prep for this, without spoilers, how do you feel about book 5? Where does it rank? Previously, 4 was your favorite. Is it still a blur?
It's still a blur. So last night we're on the phone and I'm like, okay, what chapters do I need to prepare for? And he's like, chapter 13 to 14. And I was like, okay, what's happening in those? And he starts to like give a basic summary of where he left off. And I was like, I have no memory of this at all. So I started on the plane this morning and again, it's a blur. It's a very good blur. And I haven't finished it because I stopped where we stopped. Of course, I know what happens, but I think 4 is still my favorite. Long story short, I don't remember. 4 is still my favorite.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's good. I'm really enjoying 5 a lot. I will wait until I finish the books for my final judgment. But let's get into where we left off in chapter 13. Now, where we left off, we had the truce-ish meeting where we've got Prometheus and Ethan Nakamura and the big giant and the Empusa come in and trying to talk Percy into surrendering. And then Prometheus gave Percy a big old forehead boop to show him the rest of the vision that got cut short from before when Hestia was putting the stuff in his brain about Luke's backstory. So the boop happens, and Percy is back at May Castellan's. Now they are inside her living room, and he can see into the kitchen where Thalia is getting her wounds tended to by May. That was the whole reason they were visiting the house, is that Thalia was hurt. Annabeth is playing with a Medusa Beanie Baby because she's 7, and that's the right thing to do. Hermes and Luke are in the living room. Hermes has a shifting face, and he's wearing a navy tracksuit and winged Reeboks. Luke asks why Hermes would show himself now and not all the other times that he's called for him. And then Luke says, "You left me with her," in italics, which I get that it's tricky, but that's still your mom. Come on, Luke.
Yeah, he then goes on to explain a little bit of what it was like living with her.
Yeah.
And he explains that she would shake him and scream about this horrible fate that he would have. And yeah, that's pretty terrifying for anybody, whether or not it's his mom. It was still, I think, a really difficult place to grow up.
Certainly. Hermes warns Luke not to dishonor her, though, saying that she did the best she could. And then Hermes explains that he couldn't interfere with Luke's path because the children of gods must find their own way. And to me, it feels like a little bit of BS. And it just feels like Hermes could have explained this to him earlier, some sort of thing of, "Hello, it's me, your dad. I can't interfere, but it's going to be tough out there, punk." Something.
Right. I mean, Poseidon doesn't interfere with Percy's life, but he still shows up in it every now and then.
Right.
With encouraging cryptic words and things like that.
Yeah, 1-word or 2-word post-mail messages.
Yeah.
It wasn't "be ready" or "get ready." Oh, thanks, Dad. Well, at least it's something.
Yeah.
Luke asks if Hermes really thinks that growing up on the streets, fighting off monsters, and fending for himself was in his best interest. Hermes replies that that's how he knew Luke would be fine, because he is his son, and he starts to go on about he was able to accomplish as a baby, and Luke yells that he's not a god, and then brings up my point, why couldn't you have just said something to me earlier at any point before now? Why only show up at this instance? And Luke begins to yell, but then lowers his voice to say that when May was having one of her fits, shaking him and saying things about his fate, he could have said something then. He could have come in after one of these very scary moments. So yeah, you get a little bit of insight into how things could be tough. And I think Luke makes a good point. Hermes could have said something, could have said anything, and it wouldn't have counted as interfering.
Yeah, it really does humanize this villain, which is interesting.
Yeah, but don't worry. After the humanization, Thalia comes in later and is like, he sucks, and I love that part. So Luke goes on saying, you also could have talked to me when I would hide in my closet to avoid her scary green glowing eyes. And he asks Hermes if he cared that Luke was scared and if he even noticed that Luke ran away, which, tough stuff. Hermes definitely could have handled all of this better. May is chatting it up with Thalia and Annabeth in the kitchen, sharing Luke baby stories. Classic mom move. Barb loves doing that. But it's not necessarily baby stories for me. It's toddler stories, because I was I was a little bit of a jerk as a toddler. I grew out of it real quickly, though, so I'll take it. So she's chatting it up with them. Annabeth then looks to Luke, holds up a burnt cookie, and mouths, "Can we go now?" Is this really 7-year-old behavior to be this party's kind of a bummer? It felt very strange of a 7-year-old.
I think that Luke was afraid of his mom as a 7-year-old. It makes kind of sense. She recognizes that something's not right. It doesn't feel like a home to her either.
Okay.
And there's burnt cookies, so obviously she wants
maybe
the real
that's it.
thing.
Let's get some real ones.
Yeah.
Hermes tells Luke that he does care, but he cannot go against the ancient laws and interfere with the lives of mortals. And he begins to say, especially when your destiny, but then trails off. Luke presses him on it, wanting him to finish the sentence, but Hermes merely tells him that he should not have come back because it only upsets both Luke and May. And Hermes now does understand that Luke is getting too old to be on the run without help, so he will speak with Chiron about him attending Camp Half-Blood, and he says that he will have Chiron send a satyr to bring him in. So the Grover introduction, which is nice. We're getting more of that backstory. Luke says that they're doing fine without his help, and again asks what he meant about his destiny. Hermes studies Luke's face, and Percy can tell that Hermes knows exactly what May's mutterings mean, and he has a sense of the fate.
Yeah, I don't remember the ending of how all of this goes. I'm really intrigued by the fact he knew all of this was going to happen. He knew that Kronos was going to take over Luke's body. Did he tell the other gods? They all know that this was coming. It feels like they could have interfered at some point if they knew it was coming, or did he keep it to himself in like an attempt to actually protect his son?
I don't know. I wonder if there is an example of gods interfering and things went incredibly badly, and that's why they are so hesitant to break this law. But yeah, it seems like they're skewing way too hard on the don't interfere.
Right. I think they'd interfere in this case because it would save them in the end. They don't interfere in the cases where it's for the good of the humans or the demigods. But in this case, if they could have stopped Kronos, I think they would have.
If anyone's going to be selfish, it would be the gods. So I don't understand why they didn't interfere at any point.
That makes me think he didn't tell the others.
Like he was embarrassed that it was his kid that's going to be...
No, he wanted to, my theory is he wanted to save Luke. He actually does love him, and he wanted to save him from, if the gods knew that eventually he'd be taken over by Kronos, the gods would just eliminate Luke right away.
But then why didn't Hermes do anything? Why is he like, I won't tell anyone, but I also won't do anything?
Yeah, I know. This is the point that I have. And I'm going to keep reading as soon as the show's over to find out if it's answered.
Hermes finally says to Luke that he is the god of travelers and the god of loads. He knows that Luke must walk his own path, even if it tears up his heart, like he is Justin Timberlake in that NSYNC song that slaps super hard. And then Luke says, you don't love me. Hermes promises that he does, tells him to go to camp, and promises to get him a quest as soon as possible. He starts spitballing some things that could be quests, like one of Hercules' labors. We know that's a bad call because Luke does not like that his quest is basically a repeat of something somebody already did. Mm-hmm. And Hermes says that Luke can be a great hero before, and then Luke asks, before what? And then asks what May saw that made her like this, and asks what will happen to him. He says to Hermes that if he loves him, he will tell him. Hermes says he cannot, and Luke screams that this proves that he doesn't care, and he yells loud enough that the conversation in the kitchen stops, and May asks Luke if everything's all right. Luke turns to hide his face, but Percy can see that he's tearing up. Luke says that he's fine and that he has a new family and he doesn't need either of them, which feels rude to May. She's just doing her best. She's been dealt a tough hand. I don't know that she's done anything wrong. Yeah, she's scaring Luke, but you would think that Luke would recognize it's not her fault. So I don't know why he's angry at her. I feel like he should direct it towards Hermes.
I think when he's that young, he's not going to make the distinction that she's doing the best that she can do.
Okay. Yeah.
That's just my thought on it.
Okay. No, I can see
He's just angry. He's just an angry kid.
Yeah, a little angsty.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
A little bit.
Hermes pushes back, telling Luke that he is his father. Luke says a father, in italics, is supposed to be around, and he's never even met him. Calls for Thalia and Annabeth to join him as they leave. May begs for him to stay, saying that she has his lunch ready. Luke stomps out. Thalia and Annabeth chase after him. May tries to follow them out, but Hermes stops her, and as the door shuts, she falls into Hermes' arms, begins to shake, and then her eyes become the glowing green, and she hisses, "My son, danger, terrible fate." And then Hermes, in a more somber tone, says, "I know, my love, believe me, I know." The image fades, and Prometheus ends his extended boop with Percy.
I'm not surprised that I was confused about the plot when you were like, oh yeah, it's the part where he gets booped.
Yeah.
And in my memory, I go, of course I don't remember this.
It said Prometheus extends his index finger and touches his forehead. That's a boop.
It's a boop.
It's a boop.
I have kind of taught my cats, the only trick that I have taught my cats, because I know you can train them to do different things. I have taught them what it is to boop. So I stick out my finger and I say boop, and they bring their nose to my finger. It's actually incredibly adorable.
It's super adorable. I know that it is. Thalia asks Percy what that was. Percy, as the narrator, lets us know that he's sweating and tries to wipe it off. Prometheus tries to appeal to Percy, saying it's so awful that the gods know what is to come, and yet they still do nothing, not even helping out their own children. And he asks Percy how long it took them to share the prophecy with him, and then goes, "Don't you think your father knows what will happen to you?" And I feel like at this point, Prometheus is hard shifted from making some good points, as he did earlier in the conversation, to now he's just really being manipulative and really trying to get a particular response out of Percy, and it feels more gross. Like, yeah, early on we know what he's doing a little bit, but if he's like getting into a little like, all right, back off there territory.
He's laying it on thick, but I find it interesting because his argument does make sense. And Percy begins to wonder if he's being played or if he actually believes the argument. I think that makes the best villains is when you can see their point, they're just going about it in an incredibly destructive way. Like Thanos. I think Thanos is an incredibly interesting villain.
He could have just doubled all the crops, though.
Yes, but exactly. So he has an interesting point, right? We're running out of resources.
Yeah.
His
Make
solution
more.
is wrong.
Yeah,
exactly.
the most wrong.
But when the motivation is
yeah.
right, it makes for a more interesting villain. And I can see the motivation here as an interesting one.
I definitely liked him in this. It was good, compelling stuff. I just think it eventually got to the gross part where I was like, nah. Percy freezes. Grover tells him that the Titan is just messing with him to try and anger him. And narrator Percy says, Grover could read emotions, so he probably knew Prometheus was succeeding, which is a fun way of saying, yeah, I'm pretty upset. But this is also clutch from Grover to come in and try and calm his bud Percy down at this point. Prometheus asks if Percy really blames Luke given the circumstances, and then asks Percy if he will allow himself to be controlled by his fate. He says that he can change that by accepting Kronos' much better deal. Percy hates what Prometheus has shown him, but he hates Kronos even more. We love petty grudge-holding Percy Jackson. He offers a deal to Prometheus to send to Kronos. Tell Kronos to call off the attack, leave Luke's body, and return to the pits of Tartarus. Then maybe Percy won't have to destroy him. And I wrote, a taunt, not an offer. Nice. The Empusa snarls, Prometheus sighs, and tells Percy that if he changes his mind, he has a gift for him. And then a Greek vase appears on the table. It is 3 feet tall and 5 feet wide. It is clad with black and white designs. The lid is fastened shut by a leather harness. And Grover whimpers. Thalia gasps and thinks it cannot be. And Prometheus says that it is. And she has properly identified it. And I'm very confused, wondering, what is this? Percy has a sense of fear looking at the jar, but he's not sure why. Prometheus says that it belonged to his sister-in-law, Pandora. And I wrote in my notes, wait, isn't it supposed to be a box? That will be discussed. Percy asks if he's referring to Pandora's box, and then Prometheus shakes his head and says, I don't know how this box business got started. It was never a box. It was a pithos, a storage jar. I suppose Pandora's pithos doesn't have the same ring to it, but never mind that. Yes, she did open this jar, which contained most of the demons that now haunt mankind: fear, death, hunger, sickness. So, good to know. Excited to learn more if I talk to Dr. Moy about this in a future episode.
I was going to say, I need to know more.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like, oh, I know the phrase, don't open Pandora's box, but I don't know the story at all, aside from what they've just said here.
Well, if you would listen to the opening song on J-Hope's album, it actually explains the myth of Pandora's box in about, a minute. So you can just go do that backstage.
Okay, I'll do that.
And then that will be explained. I'd like to know, was it a jar or was it a box? And who mistranslated it and when?
A jar feels more likely. I'm not necessarily an antiquities expert, but when I've been through museums and stuff, rarely do I see like ancient Greek box. I feel like jars and vases make way more sense.
That's a good point.
The Empusa tells him not to forget her, and then Prometheus adds that yes, the first Empusa was also stuck in the jar and released by Pandora. He says that he finds it funny that Pandora gets the blame. It seems strange to punish her just for being curious. He says this shows that the gods want the lesson to be that mankind should not explore or ask questions. They should do as they're told. Prometheus tells Percy that this jar was a trap designed by Zeus and the Olympians as revenge on Prometheus and his entire family, such as Epimetheus, his brother, and then his brother's wife, Pandora. Another person that I'm going to have to ask Dr. Moy about. What's up with Epimetheus? And
I don't know.
Why do their parents name all of their children something Etheus? Prometheus says the gods knew Pandora would open the jar and were willing to curse both their family and the entire human race along the way. Percy thinks back to his dream, where he saw Zeus take down an entire hotel building just to destroy 2 children to cover his own butt. Percy bets that Zeus lost no sleep over the death of Maria D'Angelo, and he also thinks that Hades is no better, as he cursed the Oracle, a young girl, to a terrible fate simply because he couldn't take revenge on the person that he wanted to take revenge on.
Right. This is where I find his argument the most compelling when he brings it back to Pandora's box. The gods don't want you to be curious. They don't want you to ask questions, and they'll punish everybody if you do. And that, I think, is a really compelling argument. Not the right solution, but this is where I think his argument becomes really interesting.
Yeah, it makes me want for Percy and their team to win and save the day, but then also have a stern talking to the gods. Like, hey, we saved your butt. Now let's fix things, because there is a lot that's wrong in the world right now. Percy also thinks back to Hermes abandoning Luke without any sort of warning or trying to raise him to prevent his heel turn. But then Percy wonders if Prometheus is toying with his mind. But then Percy wonders, what if he's right? Thinking, what makes the gods any better than the Titans? Prometheus taps the jar and states that only one spirit remains inside the jar. Percy knows that it is hope. Prometheus is proud of him for getting it right. He states that the spirit of hope, Elpis, would not abandon humanity and does not leave without being given permission. She can only be released by a child of man. Again, want to know about this in a myth episode. Prometheus slides them the jar and says it's a reminder of what the gods are like. He says they can keep Elpis if they desire, but if they decide that there's been too much destruction and suffering, Percy can open the jar and let Elpis go. Prometheus will know that this is a surrender, and he promises that Kronos will be lenient and spare the survivors, which I highly doubt. Do not trust this at all.
This is where it gets icky for me, because he's basically saying, take this, and I'm going to kind of give you the exact same problem as Pandora was given. This curiosity, this like need to open the box, open the jar, right? And I'm going to tell you I'm doing a good thing, but basically you give up hope. And this is the part where I'm just like, all right, now you're icky, and now you're manipulative.
Totally. Yeah. Percy stares at the jar and thinks that Pandora, quote, had been completely ADHD like me, which in the ADHD episodes, I know that's not the way you're supposed to word it, but the point that he's making is that he could never leave things alone, and he doesn't like temptation, and he wonders, is this my choice? Is the prophecy coming down to leaving the jar be or opening it? Which is interesting, because I still don't really know exactly what the choice is, but that's possible. It's a good thought by Percy here. Percy says he doesn't want it. Prometheus says, it's too late, and the gift cannot be taken back. And really, Prometheus is pulling no-take-backsies in a war to save the world? No. Finders keepers. He stands up, the Impusa takes his arm, he calls for the giant by name, Moraine, and says they are leaving. He says that they'll see Percy soon, one way or another. Ethan Nakamura shoots Percy an angry look, and the group then walks through Central Park like it's just a normal Sunday stroll. And that's the end of the chapter. You shook your head at the mention of Ethan Nakamura. You're not a fan either? I don't like this guy.
No, he really bugs me so much. I do not like him. No. He's always the one stabbing them in the back, even though,
well, let's get into chapter 14 on that note. Chapter 14 is called Pigs Fly. Hard to guess. Super short, super vague, could be anything. So I just wrote, and I just took a big swing here. The wild boar from before comes back and is given the magical ability to fly. Who's to say? I don't know. I haven't read far enough to know if that is it or if there's something else, but...
Yeah, me neither, actually.
You did at one point in time.
I did at some point. Apparently not memorable enough to remember.
So our team returns to the Plaza Hotel, and when they do, Thalia takes Percy aside and asks him what Prometheus showed him during the big boop. Percy doesn't want to do it, but he shares the story. Thalia rubs her leg in remembrance and says that was a bad night, and Annabeth was too young to really know what was going on. Percy asks Thalia if she knows what happened to May. She says that she never saw her have an episode, but Luke told her about them. He made her promise not to tell anyone, and she has no idea what caused them to start because Luke never told her. Percy believes Hermes knew that Luke would become Kronos. Thalia cautions Percy that Prometheus was manipulating the dream to paint it in the most negative light possible. She says that she knows that Hermes loves Luke just by seeing his facial expressions, adding that Hermes was there to check on May and to care for her. And it's interesting coming from Thalia, who wasn't a fan of the gods in general. For her to be taking their side, I think drives this message home extra hard. It's not like she's some Olympus fangirl who's just like, oh, I love them. They're great. No, don't worry about it. No, she has been very critical of them in the past. So if she's saying that she thinks that they might be all right and they might be getting a bad light in this particular instance, then I take that to heart.
Right, yeah. Except that now she is, how much has she changed? Now she's on the inside. She serves Artemis. by extension, she serves Zeus. So how much have her opinions been colored too?
I mean, it's possible, but also maybe it's now that she's on the inside, she sees that things are better. You know, it is hard to say. It could go either way. Percy counters that it still wasn't right for Hermes to never help Luke and to never stop him from running away. Thalia tells Percy that he cannot start feeling sorry for Luke because all demigods have struggles to overcome and their parents are hardly ever around. Luke made bad choices and no one forced him to make them. And I wrote in all caps, Thalia, the voice of reason. This is exactly what my point has been throughout the whole series. I know that he gets to a point where it's too late and then he realizes, oh, I goofed. But I don't know, maybe don't get in business with someone who's been locked in Tartarus for all of eternity and is a literal titan and is one of the most evil beings imaginable. Like, maybe don't do that, and then you won't get into thing of like, oh no, I have to give up my body? That doesn't sound like fun anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Annabeth and Thalia both were on the run with him and had similar difficulties at home. He's the only one who really turned that into a bad thing.
For sure. She confides in Percy that she's worried about Annabeth. Thalia doesn't think Annabeth could take Luke down in a fight if push came to shove because she's always had a soft spot for him. Percy's face gets red because he hates ever recognizing that they like each other. He says she'll be fine. Thalia's not so sure. She cites that after that night from the vision, Luke became reckless and moody like he had to prove himself. Thalia says that Luke is partly to blame for the trouble they were in with Grover on their way to Camp Half-Blood because he made poor choices. He wanted to battle each monster along the way, and Annabeth saw no wrong in that because Luke was her hero, so he was just defending them and doing what needed to be done.
I mean, in a way, that means that Luke is to blame for Thalia being a tree for however long that was.
Yeah.
So I'd be pretty pissed if I were her, too.
Yeah, that was a big reveal from Thalia to say that Luke was trying to pick fights all along the way.
Yeah.
It seems like their whole situation was entirely avoidable.
Yeah.
Thalia says that Annabeth only knew that Luke's parents made him sad, didn't understand the more complicated elements of it, and Annabeth was very defensive in protecting him, and Thalia says that she still is defensive of him, and she just wants to make sure that Percy doesn't fall into the same trap. Quote, Luke has given himself to Kronos now. We can't afford to be soft on him. Voice of reason. I love it. I really love it, especially given what Percy just saw. Percy looks out onto the city and realizes that all of what's happening is because of Luke's bad choices. Percy tells Thalia that she's right. She pats his shoulder and says that she's going to check on the hunters and get some rest before night. She tells Percy that he ought to do the same, and I'm thinking, more dreams? And then Percy says, the last thing I need is more dreams. Thalia sympathizes, and that makes Percy wonder what she's been seeing in her dreams.
It makes me wonder, too, because I thought it was just demigods that had them, and now that she was, I mean, she's an immortal demigod and still having dreams, I guess. It's an interesting question.
Right. I think she still is a demigod. She's just a demigod with immortality. I don't think that necessarily changes her nature. But
I would have assumed it did. I would have assumed she would be done with the dreams.
Okay. Well,
But
we'll just have to wait
it seems not.
We'll just have to wait for Uncle Rick's cash grab that authors are doing now, where they're like, what if I rewrote the Twilight book, but now it's Edward this time? That sucks. I hate that so much. Just write a different book. Come on.
Yeah, but I still read it. So.
I know, but that's the point. That's why it sucks. You gave Stephanie Meyer money that she didn't earn. Well, I've already written this book. Let me just change all the I to she and rechange all the sentences. Don't like it. I don't like it. Write a prequel, write a sequel, write a spinoff. Don't just be like the same book, but the other person. And then what also doesn't make sense is I saw you buy this book. It's like 5 times longer than the first one. What's Edward doing?
He's got more thoughts.
Oh,
He's got an eternal mind.
Oh, she smelled so good. Stupid.
The thing was, that was the book that half of it was leaked online as a PDF. And I was of the same vein as you. I was like, I'm not reading a stupid book that is the same book, but told from another perspective. Then it was leaked online. And I was like, I'll read the leaked version, but it was only half of it.
Yeah, because she leaked it because pre-sale orders weren't good.
Yeah.
You fell in, hook, line, and sinker.
But it was good. I liked the book. So
she won.
So did I. So
anyway, Percy Jackson. Narrator Percy then explains to us, the reader, that for demigods, dreams become more intense and more frequent as their surrounding circumstances become more dire. And this makes sense given the previous 4.5 books. Thalia says that Percy should get some sleep regardless because it's going to be a long night, and it might be their last night ever, so maybe get some rest beforehand. Percy begrudgingly recognizes that she is correct and then hands her Pandora's jar. He asks her to lock it in the hotel vault, citing that he's, quote, allergic to Pythos. Now, when he says the hotel vault, did he just mean like a safe inside of a room?
I think so.
Okay,
yes.
calling it a vault was strange. I was like, is there like a big bank vault in the hotel? How does he know the combination?
I think he means like a
little boop, 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 boop.
little booper, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. I've just never called that a vault. I always called it a safe.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
Hey, it's Mike from the future. I normally don't do this, but in retrospect, them putting it in the actual hotel vault makes way more sense, and I only realize this because of Sherry's key insight that she sent over to me via audio with the edit for this week's episode.
I'm just not realizing how large this vase is because I've always pictured it as like a mason jar. I must have read it as like 3 by 5 inches as a child, but 3 feet by 5 feet is like almost the size of a twin bed.
So yeah, an individual room safe would be way too small. They had to have used the official hotel safe, so my question from before stands, how did they get the combination to the hotel safe? Anyway, here's the rest of the episode.
Thalia smiles and agrees that this is a good plan. Percy finds a bed, goes to sleep, and of course, it's dream time. Percy sees Poseidon's palace. The enemy army is approaching. The fortress walls are no more. The temple that was used as the headquarters is on fire, and Percy can see into the armory where Tyson, who he does just call straight up my brother, and I always love that, super adorable that he doesn't qualify as half-brother or anything like that. It's just Tyson's his brother, love it. Tyson is eating lunch with the other Cyclopes. Apparently they're on a lunch break. Good working conditions that even in war, they have a lunch break. The Cyclopes Union, they're doing it right. I like it. They are eating from a jar of Skippy extra chunky peanut butter. Very happy to know that Tyson is a fellow chunky fan, not a smooth guy.
Yeah.
I'm a chunky fan. And Percy doesn't even want to think about how it tastes underwater, which
so
I think
gross.
is, correct.
So
we
gross.
won't dwell on it.
Extra salty peanut butter.
Oh, right. I didn't even think about the
At the
salt
bottom,
element.
yeah.
Ugh. The outer wall of the armory collapses, and in falls a Cyclops warrior who Tyson tries to heal, but it's already too late. This guy fades into sea silt. Enemy giants are ready to pour in through the busted wall, so Tyson grabs the fallen warrior's club and yells for Poseidon to his brethren. But since he has a mouthful of peanut butter, Percy says it sounds more like pit bun. And then the Cyclopes grab hammers and chisels and yell, peanut butter, and follow Tyson into battle. And I love Uncle Rick's dedication to recognizing, okay, readers have not laughed in a little bit. Time for a joke. And it's good. This was great and much needed, given that we've had some pretty intense stuff going on for the past couple of chapters. The scene then shifts to Ethan Nakamura, your favorite, at the enemy camp. And it spooks Percy because the army is large and they are back at Auntie M's Garden Gnome Emporium. So we've come full circle and we're also back in New Jersey, my home state. Let's go! It is abandoned. The statues are broken and vandalized. Grover's uncle is missing an arm from his statue, which just ruins my hopes for maybe he can still be saved and unstatuized. He might be missing an arm if they do. Part of the roof is caved in, and there's a big condemned sign on the door. There's loads of enemies camping around the building, mostly monsters, but there are some humans, and there are some demigods as well. They have a purple and black banner, the dedication to the arts and crafts by Kronos' army. They always have a banner. Who's making the banners? I need to know. They've got the banner as well as 2 guardian Hyperboreans. And I do want to know about the Hyperboreans now that they've come up more than just the one reference. Got to talk to Dr. Moy and see what's going on with them. Ethan is beckoned inside by Prometheus, who says that the master wants to speak with him. And inside, Kronos sits atop a golden throne and gives a crooked smile when he sees Ethan Nakamura approach. He asks him what he thought of the diplomatic mission he was just sent on, and Ethan says that Prometheus is probably the better person to ask. Kronos says, but I asked you, not Prometheus. Ethan says that he doesn't think Percy's ever going to surrender, and Kronos asks if there's anything else. Ethan stammers, but says no. Kronos asks why he looks so nervous then, and Ethan says it's because this place used to be Medusa's lair, and it's just creepy vibes. Can't blame him. Then Kronos assures him that Medusa hasn't reformed yet, so he needn't worry. And then I realized, oh, right, the Minotaur reformed, and he was from the beginning of book 1. As things go on, are we going to have to re-worry about Medusa and Krusty and everybody else who's gone away? But she hasn't reformed yet, so I guess that means the Minotaur is stronger than Medusa? Because I always thought it was like based on the strength of the monster, they might reform quicker. But she is not back yet, according to Kronos.
I always thought that it was just randomized.
Okay.
Based on how, like, certainly you're killed was one thing. That, like, how mortal the wound was that killed you is my thought. I always imagined it was random.
I thought they mentioned something about more powerful ones coming back more quickly. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean, like, Minotaur ranked higher than Medusa just because he came back a little bit sooner. Who's to say? Maybe it is the way they were defeated because all Percy did was, like, break his horn off. And that didn't seem like super intense.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
what?
Didn't he like also stab him?
Oh, yeah, but details.
Yeah.
Kronos says that there are stronger monsters in the room. And then Kronos freezes a Laestrygonian mid-fry bite. Glad that the fryers are still operating. And then Kronos wonders why someone would turn enemies into stone in favor of just freezing time itself. And my thought was, that's not her magical power?
Yeah.
Like, yes, Kronos, you are the Lord of Time, so you can do it. But Medusa turns people to stone. Kind of her thing. She can't just, just wild criticism from him.
He just has to prove that he's the scariest one in the room.
I know. He sucks so much.
I know.
He asks Ethan what happened the night prior on the Williamsburg Bridge. Ethan says he doesn't know. Kronos says, yeah, you do, citing that when he attacked Percy, the girl jumped in the way, and there was something off about that. Ethan says that she wanted to save him. Kronos reminds Ethan that Percy's invulnerable, so why would she do that? And Ethan says he cannot explain it. He wonders maybe Annabeth forgot. Just kind of like an instinct thing. Kronos thinks that's a bunch of baloney and asks Ethan where he was aiming. And in the previous episode, Eric and I were wondering, did Kronos mean the wound or Annabeth when he just said interesting when he saw that thing all go down? And I was more team Kronos is picking up where the wound might be. Eric was more team, he thinks Annabeth is the real wound. She's the real soft spot.
Oh,
like I can get to him.
Okay.
Which honestly, they both could be correct.
Yeah.
But at least in this instance, he's talking about trying to find the invulnerability spot on his body. So I at least get the 1-0 lead for now. Ethan tries to recall, but cannot remember, saying that it all happened so fast and he doesn't think that he was aiming for a particular spot. He didn't have something in mind when he was thrusting out with his sword. Kronos says, I see. If your memory improves, I will expect. And then he winces, and the giant in the corner unfreezes. So very intriguing. Ethan asks if Kronos is okay, and then Kronos just lets out "I" in a weak voice. But Percy picks up that this voice is Luke's voice, not Kronos' voice. But then Kronos regains his Kronos form and says that this was nothing beyond a minor discomfort. Ethan guesses that Luke is still fighting him. Kronos says, no, that's nonsense. He's merely adjusting to the limits of this new form. And he assures Ethan that he has squashed Luke's soul.
I am intrigued. This had me thinking, because they're casting people for season 1 right now. Who is Luke?
Oh, they already have him cast.
Okay,
It's some kid.
Right, but this is...
I don't know kid actors.
Yeah.
He looks like he could be brooding. It's like, I saw the picture, I'm like, yeah, that could be Luke.
It's some kid, but at some point, he's going to have to act as himself, acting as somebody else.
Right.
Which is a very interesting piece of acting, and I was wondering if they would do a voiceover for somebody else's voice being Kronos, or if they would do his voice. But I'm intrigued.
I think they will do someone else's voice because at least in book 1, Kronos is separate from Luke, and Kronos' voice is like a separate thing.
Yeah, but when he's using Luke's body, he's using his vocal cords. So would it be different?
No, because Percy says it sounds like Kronos. At least when he's been describing this, it's like, this is Kronos' voice, this is Luke's voice. At the very least, they might do one of those things where it's like 2 voices at the same time, and then one is deep and one is Luke, and then Luke's solo. Like, they might do something like that with like a double speaky kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think they'll probably have someone cast as Kronos and then go on.
Right. Either way, like in like 10 years, there's some intense acting for this kid.
Right. It's an interesting casting thing to be like, all right, you're going to be like kind of important, but not around that much in this one. But we promise things are going to get really good for you as things go on.
Yeah.
It's like when you sign a contract in the NBA and it like gets more money as the years go on. It's like, this first year might not look too impressive, but 4 years from now. Ethan basically gives Kronos a, sure. Kronos then calls over a Dracana he identifies as Queen Cess. Gotta ask Dr. Moy if that's a thing or just a PJO original, and asks her if their little surprise is ready to be unleashed. She confirms, Kronos is happy, and then tells her to instruct Hyperion, who I had guessed was going to show up at some point because the Golden Titan remained unnamed and unnamed, but then had conversations with Red in the mythology episode about Hyperion, son, made sense. He tells her to instruct Hyperion to move the main force into Central Park. He believes the demigods will be in such disarray that they will not be able to defend themselves. And this reeks of Power Rangers villain strategy, where they always attack the one city where the Power Rangers are. They're like, oh, what if we attack the one place our rivals are located, Angel Grove? Like, what if you went anywhere else? But this is just poor form. You know that they're on the Plaza Hotel. Why don't you just go straight to the Empire State Building? It just seems so obvious.
They are watching all the other entrances, though.
Yeah, but I don't think they ever say like where the forces come from. They're just like, they're in Central Park. So I don't know. It seems like they came from the north, like because they were coming like through Harlem. Why don't they just keep going south? The Empire State Building's not that far away from Central Park. I don't get why they are hell-bent on destroying it. But then later in the chapter, Percy wonders if it's all a distraction. So maybe it is all a distraction. We'll have to see. But at least at this moment, I was thinking Kronos is not good at his job. He sends Ethan off to improve his memory and says that they'll chat again after Manhattan has fallen. The dream then shifts to the big house, but it's in the past because Percy's...
One thing about Ethan and why I hate him so much.
There's many reasons.
There's so many reasons. Originally, when he was introduced, my thought was he's the Gollum of this story. He's somebody who was shown mercy at some point and then just destroys everything and just kind of like ignores that. But I think that's being too kind to Ethan. I think Ethan's the Grima Wormtongue of this story. He just he turns and then he sucks so much. And every time somebody does the slimiest, schemiest thing, it's always him. And I'm just so angry about it.
Yeah. There's one potential saving grace that I'll get into later. One potential where it's not that it's going to make him good, but it's just going to make him not the worst. The bar is the floor, but we'll see. I agree. I'm not a big Ethan guy. The dream shifts to the big house in the past. Percy says that he can tell because everybody has early 90s hairstyles, which he thinks would be good for keeping monsters at bay. He sees Chiron talking to Hermes and a woman with a baby, and I'm wondering at this point, is this the whole travel back in time, like Terminator? Like Percy killed the baby, then Luke can't do it. Chiron tells the woman it's an honor to have her here as it's been a long time since a mortal was allowed to enter Camp Half-Blood. Hermes tells Chiron not to encourage her and then tells May that she can't do this. It's the thing that'll lead to her eyes, was my guess, and not a hard one to make. I guessed that it was going to be some sort of prophetic vision thing forgetting the major plot point that's about to be discussed. Narrator Percy again says, with a shock, I realized I was seeing May Castellan. And this is the second time he's done this recently where in the previous dream, it was very clearly Hades. And he was like, that's Hades. And now in this time, he's like, that's May. Like Hermes, a baby, the 90s, do some quick math, Percy. It shouldn't be that hard. She probably also looks like May, but a little younger. He's surprised and realizes that it's May. But Percy's bigger point is that she just looks completely different, so full of life, so full of joy. That's why he didn't recognize her. She tells Hermes not to worry because they need an oracle. And I was then just, it all came together. She cites that their old oracle has been dead for 20 years, and Chiron says it's been longer than 20 years. Hermes is frustrated, saying that he didn't tell May the story so that she would apply for this position. And he's worried because it's dangerous. And he asks Chiron to tell her that, and then he does. I think this is a really cool plot twist. I didn't see this coming. I think this is a cool way for the origin to happen.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed this. I think it's really good. Now, Chiron says that he has forbidden anyone from even trying because they're unsure of what exactly is going on, but it just seems like humanity has lost the ability to host the oracle. May says that they've been through this and she knows that she can do it. She pleads with Hermes that this is her choice to do good. She says she's been given the gift of sight for a reason. And I've got a big home run prediction to make. Rachel Elizabeth Dare, gonna become the new Oracle. Don't react, make no faces, no one, nothing. I just feel like we've got someone who is given the gift of sight and has some sort of something power, and we have this new problem where it's like, oh, humanity can't do it, blah, blah, blah. And the other thing we have is we need something to get Rachel Elizabeth Dare out of the way so that Percy ends up with Annabeth, because currently, Rachel Elizabeth Dare is too good. Like, there's got to be something to make her not a compatible person for him. She's either got to be a jerk, she's got to die, she's got to become a hunter, which, hey, door's still open, or she's got to become the Oracle. And I'm thinking that that's it. So, I don't know. It seems like it's possible. And I'm just going to keep going and not look at your face.
Yeah, well, I'm working really hard on
I'm proud of
nothing.
you. I can tell with my peripheral vision, but I'm not going to look. Percy wants to yell out to May and tell her to stop because he knows what's about to happen, but he cannot move or speak. Hermes is downtrodden, saying she could not marry if she became the Oracle, and she would not be able to see him anymore. May touches his arm and says that she cannot have him forever since he's immortal, and he will eventually move on. Pretty mature of May here.
Yeah.
I think that that's a good approach.
Pretty immature of Hermes. He didn't have to bring her here. He didn't have to show her where to go.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're still an immortal god. You could just say no. Like,
Maybe it's part of the not interfering thing. Maybe she wanted to do it and he didn't want to force her not to.
Maybe. Just
from like, you're an adult, you can make your own choices kind of thing, as opposed to being like, I forbid you from doing this thing. He probably argued with her a lot. And I think Percy at one point says like the conversation feels like one they've had before. So I think that there is at least something there, but yeah, I don't know. There could have been some other stuff going on.
Yeah.
But I also find it strange that Hermes goes like, oh, I wouldn't be able to marry you. You weren't going to marry her. Come on. You were not going to do this.
I think he said you wouldn't be able to marry anybody.
Like
she wouldn't be able to get married to somebody.
I thought he was like, I might propose. You won't. Hermes starts to push back against this notion, but May insists that he knows it's true and asks that he not try to spare her feelings. She says that it's okay because they have a wonderful child and she can still raise him as the Oracle. She checks with Chiron to make sure that that's true. Chiron confirms, but he does warn that he does not know how it will affect the spirit of the Oracle. The fact that she has a kid. This is the first time that a mother has tried to take on the spirit. He's not sure if the spirit will take, but May is confident that it will. She kisses Luke, hands him over to Hermes, says that she'll be right back, smiles, and climbs the stairs. Eventually, a green glow fills the house. The campers stop and stare. A cold wind rushes through the camp. Hermes cries, no, no, and hands over Luke to Chiron so that he can run into the house. And then Percy hears a loud scream from May, and the dream ends. Percy wakes with a jolt and bangs his head on Annabeth's shield. Apparently she was just about to wake him up, and her shield was right by his head. Probably scarier for Annabeth just to be like, oh, let me wake up Percy. And then he's just like, bah! Donk! It all now makes sense to Percy. May wanted to become the new Oracle, but neither she nor Chiron nor Hermes knew about Hades' curse, and the curse is what prevented it from working and put her in this state with the glowing green eyes and having her fits.
Pretty horrible move from Hades to not inform them, too.
Yeah. I guess he didn't do it because they would chastise him for being really petty, and I guess it is his way of getting back at Zeus. But again, the gods don't really care that much about mortals having bad situations along the way if they can get back at their relatives. So I think it's just Hades, again, not really caring.
Yeah, I mean, or just like enjoying the chaos that it creates. Because I'm sure that Dionysus has told the other gods, like, hey, our oracle is like a corpse now. And he didn't say anything about that. So I think he did it intentionally. He doesn't want people to know.
Oh, yes, I agree.
Oh, yeah,
I think Hades for sure doesn't want people to know because that's the only way he can get back at them. It's like, I'll do it and they'll have this problem and then it's ha 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 gotcha. Oh, there's some humans dying along the way or at least having really bad times? Well, not my problem.
Yeah.
Maybe you shouldn't have killed my wife. Which was also bad. I'm not trying to...
Yeah, but also not his wife either.
Oh, yeah. Right, yeah. My baby
mistress.
mama.
I don't know.
Annabeth asks Percy what's wrong. Percy lies and says nothing, and then asks why she's clad in armor when she's supposed to be resting. She says she's fine. She is not fine. She says the nectar and the ambrosia brought her back to life and she's good to go. Percy says that she cannot join the fight. She offers him her good arm, her other arm is barely moving, and then helps him up. The sky outside is purple and red, so it's sunset. Annabeth says that they'll need everybody that they can get, and she's about to tell Percy about the army in Central Park, but Percy knows because of the dream. He tells her about his dreams, except for the May stuff, because it's too disturbing to discuss. I feel like it might be helpful, though, for Annabeth, who's particularly not necessarily seeing the light with Luke. Like, I get he doesn't want to say it, and maybe now's not the right time. I don't know. It just feels like there could have been a better reason besides like, ooh, it wasn't fun, and I don't want to talk about it.
I don't know if it would make a difference on their current strategy, though. He does make a good call to not tell her that he saw Luke fighting Kronos.
Yes.
Because that'll make her more sympathetic. And
Correct.
I think this might have made her more sympathetic.
Yeah, maybe there will be a point where he tells her about it and it's before something more important, because, it's not necessarily going to affect the battle. So as long as Percy tells her before a moment where it would be more useful, then I'll be okay. So I'm just going to put it on pause. But if Percy goofs, I'm going to be on him. Percy also, as you said, leaves out the part where Ethan thinks that Luke might be fighting off Kronos because he doesn't want to give her hope. I support this decision. She asks if he thinks Ethan knows about the weak spot. Percy isn't sure, but he worries about the possibility of him finding out and telling Kronos. Annabeth says they can't let him. And I wonder if Ethan does know, but he's kind of holding on to it because he's starting to doubt his choices. Like, maybe he's getting to the point where he's like, I don't know with Kronos. Like, he does know. And maybe that's the thing that can make Ethan not the absolute worst. Still bad. Still bad. Not going to be like, Ethan's a good guy for not telling Kronos the one thing. No. But it would at least just make him slightly above complete trash. Percy says he'll hit Ethan on the head harder next time. Great. And then he asks Annabeth if she has any idea what Kronos meant by the surprise. And I also have no idea what the surprise could be. At first, I just thought the surprise was the Hyperion thing. But because they've already discussed the army coming through, I'm thinking, all right, it's got to be something else. I don't know what it is.
I'm now thinking it's flying pigs.
Oh.
I don't remember.
Who's to say?
But, they've got to come in at some point.
I don't know, flying pigs doesn't feel like a Kronos army vibe unless it was like, they're pigs, but they have 100 snakes for a tail, and they're all curly. Yeah. She says that she doesn't know what the surprise could be, but she does say that she hates surprises. Percy says he doesn't like them either. Annabeth asks, are you going to try to convince me not to join? And he says no, because she would just beat him up. She laughs, which Percy loves to hear. He grabs Riptide, and they go off to rally the troops, literally. They meet up with Thalia and the head counselors at the reservoir in Central Park. That's the big lake thing where we took our engagement photos? Is that what the reservoir is?
That's a good question. I don't know if they're talking about something farther north.
Okay.
Or if they're talking about that lake.
I think it's that lake.
I'm gonna go
Because
look at a
they're
map.
just like where the plaza is and they didn't travel very far. And all the other lakes are much more north.
Yeah.
This has been Central Park Corner with Mike and Cody. Thalia relays info from one of her scouts. The enemy has crossed the Harlem River, and apparently there are a lot of people in this army. Percy says that they'll hold them, and he asks Grover if he and his team are ready. And Grover says they're ready as they'll ever be. And he thinks that if there is one spot where the nature spirits can help, it's here in Central Park. And this is what I'm talking about. Kronos is a fool for coming here.
Yeah.
Because they should know one of the things. There's only 40 demigods and then Grover and his nature friends. Maybe you're in a city where there's just one huge rectangle of nature. Go anywhere else. Such as the Empire State Building.
Thinking from a strategy perspective, though, if they have more people, they wouldn't want to funnel them into a narrow street, a narrow avenue to have to come down, because then you might actually be able to defend that with fewer people.
Yeah, but what if they just surrounded the Empire State Building, just all around?
Just every avenue. Yeah, sure.
I don't know what. It's a good thing Kronos isn't listening.
Yeah, his strategists are all making the arts and crafts.
Yeah, right. They're like, where? Oh, ooh, yeah, the stitching. Yeah. Then a voice says, yes, we will, in response to Grover thinking that they're going to help him out. And it's, surprisingly, Linnaeus, not Silenus, so not the biggest shocker of the people from the Council of Cloven Elders, but still a surprise. He takes slight offense to Percy being so shocked, and he says that he is a leader of the council, and Percy tasked him with finding Grover. He then takes credit for finding Grover and says that he won't let an outcast lead the satyrs without his help. So Linnaeus letting us know he still sucks. Grover mimes gagging behind his back, which is great. Love the improv work from Grover. But then they just let Linnaeus go on, thinking that he's a hero. You know what? He's on our side. Let's not ruin his vibe. An extra body, sure.
You know what this makes me think of? When I'm doing a puzzle And you come in and I've got like 10 pieces left and you're like, oh, I'll help you now. And then you start putting them in. Like,
I don't then say, I completed the puzzle.
You're like, look at me, I'm so amazing.
I find puzzles boring. I find problem solving enjoyable. It's a little easier at the end. Percy keeps a straight face to avoid being angry or laughing at him, which I can sympathize with as a very expressive face boy. And Percy just goes, yeah. He tells Grover that he won't be alone, as Annabeth and the Athena cabin will make their stand. And I'm wondering, is this the stand? Because Annabeth is supposed to make a stand, so I'm very worried about her stand and Percy's choice. Percy says that they will make their stand here, while Percy and Thalia go off to fight the approaching army. Percy looks at the rest of the counselors and says that they have a task that is just as essential, guarding the other entrances into Manhattan. And they got to be ready to counter a sneak attack from Kronos if this large army is just a distraction. And I think that's very smart, it's very likely, so it's good, and Percy wasn't just hyping him up to be like, no, you guys have an important job too. Like, I think it is, no joke, a very important thing to do, and it makes sense. Send the invincible boy and the archers to go take care of the army. Everybody else can guard it. I think it totally makes sense. Percy checks with everyone to confirm that each cabin has a bridge or a tunnel covered, and then he wishes them all good luck, and then the battle is about to begin. But there is not a good stopping point for quite some time, so that is going to be where we close out this portion of the episode and also this portion of the live show. But for now, let's everyone here, say goodbye to the podcast people as they go into the Cashed Olympian, and we will talk about intermission, but let's all say goodbye to the podcast people.
Hello and welcome to the Cashed Olympian Utah edition. Ooh, flipping the script a bit. Been a minute since I've been on the road for one of these, but I am visiting some family and I'm here nonetheless to give you updates about the podcast. Now, one clarification of something that Kelly and I talked about, the reservoir in Central Park is actually the more northern body of water that Kelly had thought of, not the one that I was thinking of. That one is called the lake. The reservoir is a little more north. It's about a 35-minute walk north from the plaza. So that is a decent trek for them to make, but not ridiculous, but still a little bit far. Anyway, let's talk about some updates now. This past Friday, the tickets for the Texas run of TNO shows did go live. We're going to the Big Four. We're going to Dallas on the 13th. We're going to Austin on the 15th. We're going to San Antonio on the 17th. And we're going to Houston on the 19th, all in December. If you want to get tickets right now, you can do so at thenewestolympian.com/live. That's also where you can get tickets for our upcoming show in Vienna, Virginia, as well as our shows in Doylestown, aka Philadelphia, and New York City. And a reminder to follow us on social media at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, because new merch is coming out pretty soon, and I will post about it there once it's live and orders are available. The Pro Pigeon podcast pins and some other stickers should be live, and then there will be some stuff coming later down the road, such as the Camp Regular Person shirts and the TNO beads a la Camp Half-Blood necklaces. That's right, we're making those beads. Might be a little bit later down the road, but if you're a patron, you already knew this because you helped me pick the designs. That's right, patron perk. Sometimes if I'm stuck between designs and stuff for merch, I will turn it over to the patrons, and that was the case this time around for the beads. So thank you to all the folks that voted in the polls and helped me out. If you want to get in the mix and help out with things with production of the show, you should join the Patreon. And speaking of the Patreon, let's thank 50 of the folks who have joined recently. Again, still working through that wonderful backlog that we have. I don't thank more than 50 people in a mid-roll break because it'll take too long, but shout out to this next group of 50. Shout out to our newest Mega God tier patron, Hope. Shout out to our newest Super God tier patrons, Monkey King 93, Kame Ayidia, and Casey. Shout out to our newest God tier patrons, Caddy Sterin, Red Hair Jack, Sarah Barra, Hannah Petersheim, Hannah Murr, Styx, Maddie, and James Irwin. And shout out to our newest Demigod tier patrons, Molly, Adriana Ortega, Gabrielle Harvey, Natalie, Sarah Troisi, Willow B. Huddleston, Christina Mendez, Christian Villanueva, Sebastian Milan, Alina, Three Frogs in a Trenchcoat, our Lord and Savior Perseus Jackson, Soft Lightning, Margretha, Emily Rockmalevich, Cassidy Morin, Megan Thornton, Silence King, Brandon, Katie Rapp, Spell, Jay Shuffles, Miss T, Riley J, Nathan Gibbons, Fifi13, Julius Jackson, Alyssa Bender, Sagan Meow, Virginia Gonzalez, Paige Lauren, Isabella Casas, Percy Jackson's Bestie, Sydney Aldretti, Thomas, Erica Allender, Emily Lewis, and Haley Lomsma. And a name correction for Johanna Matea Engelson. Thank you all so much for your support. Zeus seems like the air travel guy, at least in the Percy Jackson books, so may Zeus bless you that whenever you are able to maybe do the thing where you take a later flight and you get a voucher and all that kind of stuff, that it all works out perfectly. If you're all caught up on the newest Olympian and you're looking for some new content from me, there's a whole bunch of other stuff I do. Obviously, I make all my other podcasts, but I also do a Dungeons and Dragons stream with some other podcasters every other Wednesday on Twitch. We do it at 2 p.m. Eastern. It's called 22 Midnight, so 20 midnight, and it's me and some other podcasters racing against the clock to save the world. It is fun. It is goofy. You don't have to watch it live. We have replays up on our YouTube page, and it's just a good time. Gabrielle Urbina, our game master, is crafting a wonderful story, and me, Emma Sherjarko, and Beth Eyre are having a wonderful time playing in Gabrielle's world. You can check it out on twitch.tv/20 to midnight, or by going to our website, 22midnight.com, 20tomidnight.com. And before we wrap up here, you're going to hear words from a few sponsors who make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of those ads will be read by me. Others of them won't. The ones that are not read by me are inserted locally. So if you live in Germany, don't be surprised if you hear an ad talking about how you kicked America's butt in the FIBA World Cup. Hats off to you, Germany. But once those ads are complete, we'll get back to this episode of The Newest Olympian.
So we've got a little bit of time here to do some Q&A before we got to get out of here. So let's do some questions. There were some really fun ones. There were a lot of really fun ones, but I cannot answer all of them. But let's do it.
Do you want to ask my question first? Or
yeah.
Do you want to answer this?
Yes.
Because I asked
Kelly
this question in the green room.
Q&A question, so let's start it off. We'll do our first question. Kelly, I believe you have a question. What's the question?
So in Percy Jackson right now, we know that there is a spy somewhere in camp. Who do you think the spy is?
We're at the point where I feel like my initial guess of Juniper is incorrect. Don't have high hopes for that. The only thing I can think of at this point is that it's going to be, because there haven't really been like hints, or at least if there are, I've like completely missed them. So I don't know that there's going to be any sort of person there, either that or I'm just being like really dense. Because of that, I feel like it's going to be someone that we know well enough. So I don't think it would be like the people who just came into book 5, like Jake Mason. Like, I don't think it's going to be that level of person, or Michael Yu. Like, I don't think it's going to be people we just met. So I think it's got to be someone that we have known before. Clarice feels too easy because of the like her being grumpy thing. And I think that's just like a vessel of giving Selena something cool to do. Selena seems too cool for it to be her. I don't think it's Annabeth, though if it was, don't think it's her. Don't think it's Grover, obviously. So the only thing I can think of is that it would be one of the Stoles, which I would think is kind of like because they're Hermes cabin people, and that feels like too easy. I don't know which one between the two, because like honestly, they feel kind of like Fred and George Weasley, where it's just kind of like, yeah, they're the same. So I don't know. If I had to guess, if I got to pick, I feel like Travis was more down to steal stuff. So I guess I'll go with Travis. But that would just be my thought. It's like, it's got to be like that tier of person. I've not picked up on any sort of clue. So I'm just gravitating towards like Hermes cabin. Hermes cabin feels like Travis. And then maybe there's some intrigue of like, one of the twins is mean. So that would be my thought. Cool. Trapdoor intact. Now, this is not spoilery, but you said that like when you were reading at this point in time, you were wondering, could it have been Annabeth?
Right. So at this point in time, and not saying if my guess was right or wrong, but when I was reading, it got to the point where Annabeth asks Percy where the spot is.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'm not supposed to tell anybody this, but if I can't trust her, who can I trust?
Yeah.
And that to me, at that point, right or wrong, that was like, oh my gosh, it's Annabeth. So at this point where we were, that's what I was thinking. Right or wrong, true or false, no emotion on my face.
Yeah, okay. No, I think it would be good. I just don't think it's going to be the thing because I know she's in the sequel series, and I think in a positive way. But if she became like the villain of the sequel series, that'd be really cool. That'd be super duper duper cool. All right, so let's get into some other Q&A questions. This one comes from Gabby. Gabby says, hi, Mike and Kelly. Huge fan of your work, although rarely see you talking about the Raptors on Horse. Classic Raptors fan. I've never really run into this issue, but there's an ESPN podcast I listen to by Zach Lowe. It's called The Lowe Post. And he always will just be like, Toronto fans always get so mad if I don't talk about Toronto. So now I feel kinship with Zach Lowe. The Raptors are great. You've just been like good and not like dramatic the past couple of years. And Horse, we talk about like the drama. So I guess you're doing okay if we're not talking about you. You either got to be like really good or like really dramatic to find your way into Horse. You just got to be like in the middle. But you might become more dramatic with this current offseason. So like, don't worry. Anyway, here's Gabby's question. If Annabeth Chase were to lead the charge in creating a WNBA team in Toronto, what would be the most creative and fitting name for the team, and what mascot would she choose? Now, I like this question a lot. I love the WNBA. They have really cool team names. You feel like you already have an answer?
Yeah.
What do you got?
They're the wise girls.
That's similar to what I was going to say. What would their logo be? Like an owl, you're thinking?
Yeah.
That would be my thought as well. But I'm thinking there's a lot of teams in the WNBA, more so than the NBA, have the thing where like the team name is just like a concept. Like in the NBA, usually have teams like the Knicks, the Bulls, the Bucks. But then there are some teams like the Heat or the Magic. But in the WNBA, you get a lot more teams. You have like the Storm or the Dream or like singular thing. So I think she could have a team just called the Wisdom. And then their logo would be an owl. That would be my fun. Not very Toronto-y necessarily, but if Annabeth's making the team, I feel like she's going to want to get the Athena pride in there.
The architects.
The Frank Lloyd Wrights, or the architects and then their mascot's just like a big Frank Lloyd Wright, I don't think that would be it, but that's fun. Very good question. This one is from Josie. Josie says, hello, I'm Josie from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, a 3.5-hour flight. Dedication. Dedication. As PJO is written in Percy's point of view, if you could choose any other POV other than Percy, who would you choose? Funny that we talked about me being like, grumble, these books. So if we gotta have the story from someone else's point of view other than Percy's, who would it be from? I would love to hear it from Tyson's point of view because he's just so sweet. Love that.
Yeah.
That would be my particular vote.
Or Chiron's point of view could be interesting.
Because he knows everything.
He knows everything.
That'd be really good with like him as the narrator.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. So then the follow-up question here, what would be your elevator pitch to get someone to read the books? There's this cool podcast called The Newest Olympian. No, I feel like really just like the books, they're fun, they're enjoyable for all ages, and they are so well paced that you will blow through them like they're nothing. Like I would just say it's fun storytelling. You learn some Greek mythology along the way. It's entertaining and educational and just a good fun story.
Right. And they're very quick, short books, but there is an entire universe if you really like them. So you can get through just a little bit and be done, or you can be really dedicated and keep going.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, this one is from Eden. Hi, Mike and Kelly. Welcome to Toronto. My question, if you could cast a buddy cop movie with one Percy Jackson character and one Harry Potter character, which two would you choose and why? So we got to do a buddy cop with two characters, but one from each universe.
Is buddy cop always like one person who knows what they're doing and one person who doesn't?
Normally, but it doesn't have to be.
Or is it two people who don't know what they're doing?
You can have everything. Like you could have two all-stars, you could have two people that have no idea what they're going on, you could have one of each. I don't think I got to limit you to any particular rules.
Yeah.
But we're just getting two characters and then they're doing some sort of thing.
My first thought was Percy and Harry.
Oh,
They both think that they're doing the best all the time, but they've lost their really helpful friends, and so they get into a lot of messes.
I want to see one with Grover and Luna, where depending on the universe, we have like the nature person who knows some like mythical creatures and the person who like is convinced that all the wacky mythical creatures actually exist. And either way, I think it would be super fun.
Yes.
So that would be my pick. This one is from Caitlin, the subject line, all caps, how about Toronto pigeons? We did see some on the way here. They look really cool. They had very interesting patterns in their feathers.
Yeah.
Hello, Mike and Kelly. Which of the PJO/Harry Potter characters would be the most fun to have as guests on Meddling Adults? And what kinds of charities would they choose to represent? So we got to get HP or PJO people on Meddling Adults, and who would be the most fun and what kind of charities would they support? I could see, Annabeth and Hermione both like very bookish and very, thoughtful. I could see them both doing some sort of charity about like get more women in STEM or, stuff like that, like those kind of educational charities. I think they'd be fun just because they would be like really precise with it. I also feel like Chiron would be really fun to have on because his whole thing is like being like ominous and little things like that. And especially for the Encyclopedia Brown episodes of Meddling Adults where like usually it's just like one little thing that Encyclopedia Brown picks up on. I could see him like really honing in on that.
And then maybe he would support a charity that like does infrastructure for like ADA accessibility, like wheelchair ramps and stuff, since he's, got that going on for him.
Yeah. Or if you want it to be a real mess of an episode,
Yeah.
the Stoles versus Fred George.
Oh.
And nobody's getting right answers, but everybody's having fun.
And then I'd have to really make sure that the charities that they're supporting are not like shell companies to like go into Zonko or go into Weasley's or go into whatever the Stoles want. Yeah. All right. So this is going to be the final question, and I think it's great. The subject line was funny. The question's very funny. This is from Estelle and Aaron. The email says, "Hi, Mike and Kelly. What type of pasta would you assign each of the main characters?" This was my dad's joke question, thought it was good. It is good. And then the subject line is, honestly, Toronto sucks. I'm sorry. Feels rude, but I was enticed and opened to the email. So, what kind of pasta would you assign to each of the main characters? I know, right? I would say, my thought is the fusilli is like the spirally one. I feel like that one is going to be Tyson just because it's like super fun and adorable. And how can you not love like wiggly pasta?
I was gonna say ravioli, but it's filled with peanut butter.
Oh, interesting. I would think that Chiron would be ravioli because you might not know what's on the inside. So it's very like, whoa, it's a mystery. It's
good.
spinach and cheese. Like that. And then I feel like...
Who's very like straight and to the point? Maybe Annabeth.
Yeah, she's kind of no nonsensey. She could be penne, just like.
Yeah, like a very like to the point.
Yep, boom, yeah, and literally point. Yeah, I could see Grover being bow ties because bow ties. It's fun and like kind of like a Grovery vibe, but also they are particularly good. They're always my choice if I'm doing a pesto-based pasta because they like hold on to the pesto well, and pesto's green and that feels like nature.
I was gonna say he was always dressing up in what he thought humans would wear, but don't wear. Yeah, and so he would just wear a bow tie every day and be like, "That's what humans do."
I like it.
And then maybe Percy is the shell pasta because of the ocean.
That's good. That's way better than what I was gonna say. I was gonna be like spaghetti because he's the main character. I like that way better. Shells is way better. What a good note to end on. Thank you all so much for coming out to the show. Oh, this was delightful. You are all wonderful. I would love to perform here forever, but I'm well past time and I don't want them to be mad at me. So first, give a round of applause for Kelly for being an amazing guest for both acts. Give it up for yourselves for coming out. Again, none of this would be possible if there wasn't desire here. Glad I could finally do a show in Toronto. And give it up to everyone here that made the show happen, from sound stuff to the bar to all the folks that like I emailed to organize things, to the social media promotion they did, to the cool posters they made that you can see in the bathrooms. Everybody who did stuff to make the show, please give all of them a round of applause here at Adelaide Hall and MRG. They were lovely. We do have to get out of here because I have an episode of TNO to get up, and then we're flying back tomorrow. But you can still get merch at the merch table after the show if you wanted to get any of those other things. Kelly will be there. But to close things out, until the next time I come back to Toronto, because obviously I got to come through here because this was a delight and we got to do some more stuff. Until I make my return to Toronto, I'll see you later. Thanks so much for coming out, everybody. Hey there! Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you want to be a part of the show's community, you can find us on social media. We're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. There's also a subreddit, reddit.com/r/thenewestolympian. And then there's also the Discord that you get access to by joining any tier of the Patreon over at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. If you want to get some TNO merch, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/merch. And if you want to support the show, and as a thank you, get access to a whole bunch of bonus content, you can do that at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. Speaking of that Patreon, let's give a shout out to our producer level patrons: Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Vicky Garcia, Ellie Hoskovchova, Veronica Bartova, Haley Hastings, Robin Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Craig McRoberts, Taylor Payne, Giselle Salvador, Peter Johnson the Twin, Sabrina Balsiger, Boney Pony, Casey Williams, Polly Burge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Josh Sayre, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Wise Girl, Ashton Gabrielson, Marco Redhouse, Caden Max, Sam Reeby, Riley Kiddes, Mary Kelly, Audra, Mrs. O'Leary, Rodith Kalma, Milo Kim, Harlan Christ, CC Reeds 23, Sam Sandkoff, Julia Kendall, Emil Oskar Thomason, Liz Cardigan, Sarah Neal, Ricky, John Drielsma, Rayla Matthews, Riley Draken, Luna Kadoon, Sky Mallory, Elizabeth Obermiller, Aiden Parziani, Biggest Tyson Fan, Hunter Landstrom, Captain Jack Rackham, Sky Captain and the Princess, King Bastion, One Damn Distraction Coming Up, Ethan Robinson, Ginger Spurs Boy, Joshua Aid, A Cup of Solace, Meg Roy, Lux, Neil, Will Buchanan, and Olivia Krenicki. If you want to support the show in a non-monetary way, simply talking about the show is so helpful. Word of mouth is huge. So you can tell someone that you know who loves Percy Jackson about the podcast, or you can talk to someone who's looking for an excuse to finally get into the Percy Jackson books about it, or someone who's maybe getting hyped for the TV show that's coming up and they want to understand what's going on. Or you could post about the show on social media, or you could leave us a rating and review on whatever podcasting app you're using. All of these things really do help. I'm very appreciative to everyone who has already done so and to anyone who will do so in the future. But I'm just so thankful that you tuned into this episode, and I hope you tune into our next episode where we will be joined by Johnny Frolickstein, not live in a live show sense, but live in a me and Johnny recorded it in the same room sense as we finish up chapter 14 and cover all of chapter 15. But until then, I'll pursue you later. Hey, how's it going? It's me, ASMR Mike. So I'm recording this one on the desk in the guest room of my in-laws, and it is a glass desk and there is a little pencil case nearby. So I'm just going to make some noises around that. Here's just me kind of like tapping my fingers on the glass desk. There's also a drawer that I'll slide in and out. Ooh, a little squeaky. And then here's the pencil case. I'll open a compartment. And then here is a pen, I think. Nope, that looks like I think it's like a laser pointer thing that you use if you're giving a presentation. I'll try clicking some buttons. Thank you for listening.